Let's talk pennies. As most of you know, the U.S. Mint struck its last penny on November 12th of this year, 2025, ending more than 230 years of production. This decision was driven by cost inefficiency. Each penny cost about $3.96 to produce, and a shift towards digital payments impacted it as well. The move is expected to save the government roughly $56 million annually. So many of you asked the question, are pennies still legal tender? And yes, they sure are. Pennies remain legal tender indefinitely. And there are an estimated 250 to 300 billion pennies still in circulation. You can use them for purchases, deposit them at banks, or exchange them for other currency. There's no official day when they'll stop being accepted because U.S. currency retains its value regardless of age. So, next question is, when will businesses stop accepting pennies? Well, there's no federal mandate requiring business to stop accepting pennies, and none has been announced. However, retailers are facing shortages, and many have started rounding cash transactions to the nearest nickel, like McDonald's, Wendy's, Quick Trip, lots of different places. There is a proposed bill called the Common Sense Act, which would formalize the rounding rules to the nearest 5 cents for transactions, but that hasn't been accepted or passed by Congress. Banks will continue to accept pennies for deposits, and those pennies that were produced in November will still be put into circulation through the early part of 2026. At some point, that mint will run out, and no pennies will enter circulation, and then as time goes on, pennies will become harder and harder to find. So, that's pennies. You don't have to worry. You don't have to make any big changes immediately, but our system is ready anytime you want to make the change. So let me show you what you would do. Okay, so first thing you would do is you would go to the Methods of Payment editor. You'd come to Cash, and you would come to this field called Lowest Coin Denomination, which is currently a 1 on your system, and you would change this to a 5 for the nickel. And then you will come to this field, Coin Adjusted By. It will default to rounding. Rounding will either round up or down, and if you go with truncation, truncation will always round down. And then this field, allow exact amount. If it's no, then the clerk cannot override and accept the exact amount. So if the amount is $9.56 and the person has the exact change, the system won't allow the clerk to override. If you set this to yes, then the clerk can override the till and put in the exact amount. Okay, let's go to the till and see how this works. So here on the till, you can see I've already rung up a greeting card for $4.57. With tax, it comes to $4.98. If you remember, we're set to round. So when I click Cash, you'll see that before rounding, it was $4.98. And then after rounding, it rounded up to $5. Now, let's back out of here. Come to the item and hit Enter. We'll change this price from $4.57 to, let's say, $4.51. Now you'll see that before rounding, the total price is $4.91. I'll hit Cash. Now you see before rounding it was $4.91, and now it's rounded down to $4.90. Now let's go back to the Methods of Payment editor. This time we're going to change the rounding to truncation. I'm also going to set allow exact amount to yes. We'll save our change. We'll go back into the till. So in this case, we have a greeting card set to $4.51. The total is $4.91 again. I'm going to go back this time though and change this back to $4.57 like we had in the original transaction. You can see the total is now $4.98. When I click Cash, you can see before rounding is $4.98, and it rounded down to $4.95, because with truncation, we will always round down regardless. If this was set to rounding, this would have rounded up. Now to show the other feature, we had set in the Methods of Payment editor, I said allow exact to yes, and so the clerk can't override in this case and type $4.98 and accept $4.98 as cash. Now, what happens to that rounding? We want to make it clear that the rounding does not occur at the item level. you can think of rounding as an additional method of payment. So you accept cash, and then whatever that rounding amount is, that also becomes more or less a tender. So let's see how that looks on the back end. So I'm going to go to the transaction log viewer. And when you go to the transaction log viewer, you'll go daily cash. And I'll click print and preview. And so now you'll see that you have your methods of payment. Here's the cash for 628. And here is rounding. So today, at this point in time, we have rounding of -4 cents. Some days the rounding will be positive, some days the rounding will be negative. But that'll be an accounting entry. If you have any questions or would like help getting this set up, please call our support line and we'll be happy to help. Thanks and have a great day.